So when I was around 6 years old, just before starting school, I had to stay at my grandparents' place for around 6 months due to my parents constantly traveling for work. It happened in Europe, a little country called Lithuanian, and living in blocks of flats by the year 2000 was pretty much normal. My grandmother lived in a block of flats, 5-story building in a peaceful community neighborhood. My grandmother was working as a nanny at the time, and she had one more girl who was from Washington staying with us. Me and the girl were playing outside and we noticed a man in a brown leather jacket and brown pants lingering around the block and the entrance of our block of flats. Being kids, we didn't pay much attention to him or found his behavior suspicious. I remember passing him by the time we had to go home and him holding the door open for us. He had dark hair and these almost neon blue eyes. My grandmother's flat was on the last, 5th floor. 3 of us are having dinner when my grandfather, who at the time was working night shifts at the local billiard club, was leaving for work. So we have dinner, say bye-bye to Grandpa, and we were off to bed. Mind you, back then nobody locked the front door of the apartment because everybody knew their neighbors and trusted them in time of need. My grandmother is telling a bedtime story, and it's already dark outside, when we hear 3 muffled sounds as if furniture was falling. My grandmother rushes to lock the door for some reason. Okay, she tells us, probably someone's redecorating and moving their furniture. We fall asleep. Fast forward to the next morning. My grandfather is coming back from work. It's around 6 a.m., and he finds the front door open of the apartment that belonged to a family living on the 3rd floor. He walks in and finds a dead grandmother and a boy who was around 5 years old, and also our friend dead, with shot wounds. Me and the girl are immediately woken up. There's police everywhere. We were asked if we saw anything suspicious or people not from our neighborhood. Of course, we remember the man. Later on, he was found guilty of that particular murder, and it was all over the local newspapers. Since then, everybody I know, including myself, locks the door. Creepy murderer? Let's not meet again. I used to drink at a certain pub in Glasgow and go on to a nightclub after. The pub was populated by bikers and other heavy music fans, and this one guy that wore pale blue jeans, a white iron shirt, totally didn't fit in. Now, I'm an antisocial girl, so I would sit in the pub with a book. I liked a pint, music, and having people around. I just didn't like talking. White shirt man kept trying. He would nod at me whenever I looked up, trying to buy me a drink when I went out to the bar, and several times he sat at my table trying to start a conversation. Apparently saying, "Sorry, not interested," didn't mean anything to him. One night I was really dressed up because I felt like it. Creepy white shirt guy kept trying to catch my eye. When I walked around to the nightclub, he followed me persistently trying to get my attention. Walking in the club, I gave the bouncer my usual nod greeting. They all knew me. I went to pay to get in, and a white shirt arm popped past me and said, "2, we're together." I said, "No, one for me please, Kate," and went in. All night this dickhead followed me. The club has 3 floors and was packed, but this guy would even wait outside the loose if I went in. One friend I left my drink with later admitted he put it down on the bar for a while. After a while, I started feeling odd. Very odd. I was dizzy, sweating, shaking. I decided I must be coming down with something and headed home. I don't remember going down the stairs, but apparently white shirt followed me. However, the bouncer stopped the creep getting out when he tried saying I had too much to drink. I used to run pubs. The bouncer knew I knew my limits, and he said I wasn't drunk, I was ill. White shirt guy got pushy, and Dale, the bouncer, ended up pinning him against a wall. However, during this time, I wandered off. One street behind the club is the red light district. No idea how I got there, but I was spotted 3 hours later walking up the main road by my home. My skirt was ripped. I had no shoes, coat, or bag. A biker friend who was also a cab driver recognized my tattoos from the back and stopped to see if I was okay. He instantly realized I wasn't, got me in his car and phoned the nearby hospital to say he was bringing me in. My drink was spiked with ketamine, a borderline dangerous dose. The cab driver talked to Dale, the bouncer, and between them they figured out what happened. The cab driver and his friends tracked down White Shirt Creep and gave him a kicking. Then the railway lads heard and they gave him a kicking. He was barred from the club and bar club. It was an awful long time before I went out again, though. From 2006 to 2011, I worked in the electronics department at the local Walmart in the small city I lived in. Through those 5 years I had worked there, I had plenty of creepy encounters with strange customers, especially considering the state hospital is directly across the road. This isn't just a regular old creepy encounter, but something that would lead to me being stalked for nearly a year. It all started in 2010 on a night I was working second shift. I was doing my end of shift ritual when a woman in her late 40s interrupted me. She was with a little girl, no more than 3 or 4. "Excuse me, I need help with my cell phone." She spoke softly. She proceeded to tell me her problem. "I need to turn my phone into a straight talk phone. The girl earlier said you could do it." Of fucking course she did, I thought to myself, but my lips said, "Sure, let's see what I can do." She handed me a 6-year-old phone from Verizon, and I knew as soon as I saw it I wouldn't be able to do what she wanted. I explained she would have to buy a new phone from Straight Talk and transfer her old number. Basic shit, really. Now, I always took my job seriously and held myself to the highest standard of customer service. I would often receive letters to the store from customers complimenting me. So, I assure you I did nothing to actually piss off this lady. But sure as shit, she was pissed. Why the hell would I buy a new phone? I already have one. She's screaming at the top of her lungs. She claims I'm upselling her and being a corporate goon. I finally managed to defuse the situation, and as she left the department, she gives me the classic, "You'll never get a job in this town again." As I am getting ready to leave my shift, my manager stops me and tells me I got a complaint at customer service from a lady claiming I swore at her granddaughter. Apparently, I told her to fuck off. I explained what happened and he just laughed it off. My managers knew it was very unlike me to say anything like that to a customer. I wish the story ended there, but then I wouldn't be writing this. For the next several weeks, I would get complaints about things I've never done, sometimes even on my days off. I would come in to questions from management nearly every day. It was complaints ranging from me being rude to a customer all the way to me doing drugs in the parking lot on break. All these complaints were coming from 2 women. As it turned out, it was Cell Phone Lady and her adult daughter. It turns out they have been scoping out my work schedule and started coming in nearly every day. They would walk through electronics to make sure they saw me, and later that night I would have a complaint. This happened for months. It happened so much, management deemed her Corzone's favorite customer. To be honest, I didn't care much. I even thought it was pretty funny. I never got in trouble, and everyone knew these ladies and just blew it off. I started caring when she took it to a new level. She started to follow me around. I would see her when I was around town. She made it clear she knew where I lived and would regularly walk by my house. I would see her standing out front just looking at my place. I began getting complaints to the city about my property, grass too tall, the old shed in my yard, my fire pit, basically everything. She even found out my girlfriend's name and began complaining at her job. I knew it was her. She would make it so clear that she was following me. Sometimes she would stop in and ask questions at work and act like the nicest customer. A few times she asked me things like, "How's your girlfriend?" Or, my favorite, How can you afford that big house on your little Walmart wage? For about 7 months, she stalked and slandered me. I started telling her I knew what she was doing and to stop. But she played it off. I couldn't report her. She never once threatened me. She was just making my life hard. By this time, everyone in my life knew about this nut job. One night, I am grabbing dinner with my friends from work, and we were joking about it when someone says, "What if you just counterstalk her?" At first, I thought it was a terrible idea, but they convinced me it would work, and they would all help me. So, we hatched a plan like something you'd read on Reddit Pro Revenge. It went as follows: find her job, find her name and address, make complaints in the same manner as her, find out all the rumors she's told about me, make it clear that we know, show her that we have numbers. I found out her information easily enough. Turns out she didn't live anywhere near me. I was even friends with a few of her coworkers. They would keep me informed on crazy shit she said about me, and even told her to stop. We began doing exactly what she was doing to me. We did this for about 4 months. The more we dug into her life, the more I found out about how obsessed she was over getting me in trouble. She had claimed that I assaulted her. She urged others to report me and follow me. She told police I was a potential drug dealer. Eventually, we won though. She started putting together that there were 6 of us digging into her life and asking questions about her. My last month at work, I didn't get a single complaint. In fact, I never even saw her anymore. The day after I quit though, I heard she was in the store complaining about a new person after asking one of the managers why I quit. I'll honestly never understand why she was so hell-bent on destroying me. I just told her to buy a $20 prepaid phone. This summer while home from college, I picked up dog walking for family and friends for extra cash on the side. Nothing too extravagant. I come over in the afternoon and entertain their animals, take the dogs on a walk, and the owners give me like $15 for stopping by anytime they need me. Yesterday I was stopping by Jack and Karen's house to walk their dog and play with their kitten like normal. Their house is in a secluded part of the neighborhood off a gravel road. Most people wouldn't know there were houses back there normally. So, Ralphie, the dog, and I were heading back to the house after taking a quick walk. For context, Ralphie is maybe 15 pounds, tiny dog. Anyway, we walked up to the front door by the path near the garage, and then I hear a guy say, "Hello?" Confused, I looked up and saw a guy that was near the front door that came from the path that goes through the front yard wearing a black polo. There were no additional cars on the street, so seeing him standing there was puzzling. I immediately pick Ralphie up and ask the guy if I can help him with anything. He asked if I was the homeowner, and I told him no, I'm the dog walker. This is where it started to get weird. He introduced himself and said he worked for a pest control company that took care of spiders and ants outside and inside homes. Okay, whatever, that's normal. So I politely said again that I wasn't the homeowner and told him that the owners would be back soon if he wanted to come back later that day, thinking that'd be the end of the conversation and he would move along. Instead, he started asking me about the dog walking and how much I got paid, how often I came by this house, and questions about Ralphie. I answered about the payment, but I left the frequency of my visits vague and didn't provide much detail. He then started asking personal questions about if I was in college, where I went, what I studied. I study neuroscience in Indiana when I'm not home, and gave him short answers to most of his questions. When I told him I study neuroscience, he replied with, "Oh, so you must be a smart girl then, huh?" The creep meter in my head shot up after that. I just said, "I try to be," and left it at that, hoping this guy would leave. To emphasize, we were standing behind bushes in a secluded area with this guy who appeared, somehow, claiming to be a part of a pest control company seeking to expand his business, but he had nothing with him. No flyers, business cards, clipboards, a noticeable company van or car. No mention of the company name. Nothing. Just a guy in a black polo asking me questions. By this point, I was extremely aware of the fact that I had nothing to protect myself with and was trying to hurry along this interaction so I can get inside and lock the door. Also, by this point, Leo, the kitten, had heard us talking and appeared in the window by the door. This then prompted the guy to say, "Aw, they have a cute kitty too? Can I meet him?" No, you cannot meet him, random guy. I am not unlocking this house to let you meet their kitten and give you access to any kind of whatever you could possibly have in mind to do. I told him again, the homeowners will be home in about 20 minutes. If you want to come back to discuss your business with them and maybe meet their cat, but I can't let you in. Sorry. Luckily with that, the conversation wrapped up and he said something about going to talk to the neighbors now and walked away. I got inside, locked the door, and checked the other doors around the property to make sure it was locked. Normally I just slip the house key under the mat when I leave, but I texted Jack to let him know about the guy and put the key in a safer location before I left. So, pest control guy, let's not meet again. If I see you outside the front door again, I won't be there without protection. Some few months ago, a friend of mine in the Navy was given orders to be stationed in Virginia. She had attempted for a while to find a renter for her house, but was unsuccessful. Still hopeful, she offered to let me stay at the place for free if I helped find a renter and keep maintenance on the place. Additionally, she had to leave one of her cats behind since she had no room to take him. Originally, I was pretty excited to live in a house for free. I live in the barracks and it can get cramped being in a small room with another person, so I accepted. When I got to the place, however, I was very disappointed. The house was large, but holy hell was it trashed. Junk laid around willy-nilly, dust covered everything, fleas were everywhere, and it definitely smelled like cats lived there. Since my friend seemed like she was a pretty clean person, sadly mistaken. Still, I stayed a bit, hopeful it would be simple to get some friends together to clean up the place and make it comfortable. I helped her finish packing and we sat around and chatted for a bit. That's when she told me about her ex. He was Army, like me, but in a different unit than mine. Originally, he had been charming according to her, but he had become unsuitable for her for whatever reason. When she called it off and told him that he had 2 weeks to leave, he became insufferably annoying and childish, hiding her boots, terrorizing the cats, leaving the place a mess, and parking his car behind hers so that she couldn't leave without pitching a fit. He eventually did leave, and that was the end of it. Apparently. After she left, I pretty much stayed away from the place until the scheduled day for me and my buddies to clean it up, dropping by every day to clean the cat box and feed the cat. One night, however, after dinner with a friend of mine, she offered to tag along with me to go feed the cat. She was one of the people that had agreed to help clean, so I figured it'd be good to let her see the place to plan out what needed to be done. When we got to the house and stepped out, I remember hearing a loud rustling coming from the surrounding trees. I figured it was some animal. As I think back on it, it could have been my memory just making the situation worse. But it is a pretty big part of the memory. As I walked up to the door, I felt incredibly uneasy, like something was wrong and that I shouldn't be here right now, but I didn't want to waste my friend's time, so I shrugged it off. I was a bit confused when I went to unlock the door as well. The bolt lock was a bit finicky, and sometimes wouldn't unlock properly, so I often had to unlock it multiple times. That is, turn the lock, try to open the door, and so on until it actually unlocked. This time, however, the door opened after the first turn. At the time, I mostly figured it was just luck, but in the back of my mind, I pondered whether or not I had forgotten to lock it to begin with. Either way, after entering, I was about to head upstairs to feed the cat, but when I attempted to flick on the lights in the entryway, only one of the two lit up. The other one didn't, so I assumed it must have blown, but when I stepped closer to see, I stepped in a small puddle of water, catching me off guard. Upon closer inspection, I discovered that the light fixture was completely filled with water and some leak from whatever was dripping the water onto the floor. Additionally, I heard a light rumbling that, at the time, I assumed was the AC. I knew the AC was right above the entryway on the top floor, so I thought maybe it was faulty or had broken and was leaking. Great, I thought, more issues to address. Still, I was there for a purpose, so I told my friend to check out the place to get an idea of what supplies we may need to clean it, while I went upstairs to feed the cat. However, before I even was halfway up the stairs, my friend called me back down. She was standing in the kitchen by the back door that led to the porch. A glass from the shattered door window littered the floor. She asked if it had been like that when I last left the place, but I could have sworn that it wasn't like that when I had left. After all, I had only been to the place once or twice since the owner had left, and I was sure that a shattered window would have caught my eye. Judging by the placement of the glass, it had definitely been shattered from outside. What was strange, however, was that the door was still locked. Not sure if anyone was in the house, I told my friend to stay there while I checked upstairs. I had no weapons on me, and I doubt that the place had any guns. But funnily enough, my friend was really into sword collecting, and many of them were downstairs, so I picked one up and tippy-toed upstairs hoping my childhood memories of stick fighting could possibly help me. Luckily, no one else was in the house, but just to be sure, we both waited outside while we called the cops. After calling the cops, I called up the owner and told her everything that had happened. The obvious break-in was very strange. Nothing was stolen, and the place wasn't in any worse state when I had left it. The only things out of place were the broken door window, the same door still being locked, and the possible unlocked front door. At the time, I assumed that the water was not associated with the break-in. Because all of this evidence, we assumed that my friend's ex had done it, since it seemed that either he was looking for something specific or just wanted to be destructive, and probably hadn't even entered the house. According to my friend, he knew that she was gone, but didn't know that anyone was watching the place, so he likely thought the place was fair game for just vandalizing it. Still, beyond the window, I know the police didn't find anything else. That night anyway. After this event, I of course was still very uneasy about going back to the place. I had never dealt with a break-in before. And then the assumption that her ex was just being a dick and lightly vandalizing the place definitely made me not want to stay there for too long for fear that I might be around the next time he decided to come back. Still, the damned cat was still there, and I couldn't let it starve. So while the police were tracking down the proposed suspect, and the insurance company were getting information, I still had to go to the place to feed the cat. I couldn't keep it with me because the barracks didn't allow pets, and I had no friends that were willing to take it in. I won't lie, I waited a couple of days to go back to that house. I had to work up the courage. I didn't live there and the prospect creeped me out, so I can only imagine how I'd feel if it had been my place. Still, the cat needed to be fed, so off I went. When I walked in, the first thing that hit me was the smell. Mildew and mold. Obviously, my barracks were loaded with it, but it was strong enough to overpower even the cat smell. The water leak had become even worse. The hardwood floor on the entryway had begun to wrap, and the ceiling was dripping. Something definitely wasn't right. It hit me that this leak was much more serious than I had first assumed. This definitely wasn't an AC issue. The roaring could still be heard too. Curious now, and not as panicky as my last venture in the house, I made my way upstairs, sword in hand, and at the top of the stairs, there's a short hallway that leads to the master bedroom. Along the way, there's a storage closet. When I passed the closet, my foot made an audible squelch. There was water here too, which made sense as it was pretty much directly above the entryway, and both the AC and water heater were in the back of the closet. When I entered the master bedroom, however, there was no water, but the roaring sound was louder and it sounded more distinct and familiar now. Running water, like what you'd hear from a bathtub. Sure enough, I discovered a door at the back of the bedroom that hadn't been noticed before. It led to a half bath with a toilet and a sink, and in that room was another door. Sure enough, the noise was definitely a running faucet. The carpet in front of the door was soaked beyond belief, and the door was locked. Judging by the placement of the door, the room beyond would have shared a wall with a storage closet, and the tub would literally be right above the house's entryway, explaining the weird water-filled light fixtures, the dripping ceiling, and the leak. At first, I figured I might as well bust down the door since it was obvious that the tub had long since overflown, and the water damage would already be a nightmare to fix. A broken door would be the least of the owner's worries. I stopped myself, though. I didn't know what I'd find behind the door, and I didn't want to go in blindly, so I decided to call the police again to get an officer to help instead. He was able to unscrew the knob and get it open. Nothing was behind the door, but sure enough, the tub had been running and had overflown. We turned it off and the officer added more things to report that had already been open about the previous incident. Putting this all together, I think it's pretty safe to assume what happened. The vandal, almost certainly the owner's ex, had broken in that night probably just before my friend and I had arrived. He'd broken into the place from the back door by smashing the window and had likely left through the front door, which was why it was unlocked. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this next part was during his original break-in, or if he came back later to do it, but I think while he was in the house, he went upstairs, plugged the tub, turned the water on, and rigged the door. The vandal obviously wasn't there to steal anything. Instead, he just wanted to flood the house, because he knew the owner would be away, and the water damage is a nightmare to deal with. I'm pretty sure that he did all of this in the same night, and that neither the police nor I had discovered the water until a couple of days after, which would explain the leak I discovered the night of the break-in. Whatever the case, whoever did it is a vindictive piece of garbage if you ask me. I'm not sure if they ever caught him or anything, or really about anything that ever happened. I gave the key to the insurance people, and decided to never go back to that place. Last I heard, she found some new tenants for the place, and it's been fixed up pretty well with no further issues. So, to give you a bit of backstory to this, about a month ago my dad started complaining about an upset stomach. He had just gotten back from some fish and chips place he went with his riding club, so naturally we had assumed it was food poisoning. This went on for about a weekend. While my mom was working, it was just me and my dad home. He was sick the whole weekend, progressively getting worse the whole time. He was puking and shitting everything else you'd expect to see from a stomach bug. When my mom came home that Sunday night, she offered to take my dad to the hospital, but he refused to go until about 2 a.m. My dad normally refuses to go to the hospital, so this is a bit concerning to begin with. At the hospital, which I've named WebMD General, his stomach bug turned out to be pancreatic cancer. Fast forward about 3 weeks, and he is scheduled to have surgery that would remove most of his pancreas, part of his stomach, part of his duodenum, part of his bowel, and patch it all together to make him 99% cancer-free, and chemo the rest out. It's an 8-hour surgery, which started at 7 a.m., and the hospital is a 2-hour drive away, so I had been up for a while at this point. This hospital is one of the oldest in the city, built sometime in the mid-1800s. It's actually as old as my country itself. All of this information will play into my story at some part. I think I'm not really sure what happened, to be honest. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. My dad had been in surgery since 7. He had just been released and was waking up in the ICU for a bit. When we went in to see him, he was a bit loopy, but he wanted a couple of things, like his cell phone and sleep apnea machine, which were all down in our car, a 10-minute walk away. I opted to head down to pick it up and let my mom stay with my dad. I had just gotten out of a 4-month stint in the hospital recovering from a back I broke thanks to an unfortunate misunderstanding between my motorcycle and a Mercedes, so naturally I wanted all the time away from hospitals as I could get. I went down to the car park to get my dad's stuff and came back up no problem. No problem until the hospital decided to change layouts on me. I walked from the ground floor up to the first floor. This hospital has some funky numbering to the second floor, where the ICU was. I got out of the stairwell, took a left, down a hallway, then a right, where there should have been a couple of service elevators, and another hallway leading to the ICU waiting room. Except there wasn't. There was a wall and a few wheelchairs. Now, I'm in no way directionally challenged. I captain an orienteering team, I hike, I sail. I have relatively decent sense of figuring out which corner of the universe I'm stuck in. But this fucked with me. So I figured I walked up to the wrong floor, and that this hospital's stupid fucking floor numbering system is stupid and confused me. With that in mind, I walked to the next floor, where I came across a woman dressed in a white starched nurse outfit from the 40s. Actually, come to think about it, the whole floor looked like it was out of the 40s. Not one poster, not one sanitizer pump, not one computer, not one phone, and a man sitting on a basic metal-framed gurney. I asked a nurse who walked past me how I could get back to the ICU, and she said to me, in the most striking fashion, "It's on the floor below." And when I thanked her and turned around, she told me, "And don't worry, sweetie, it's an old hospital. People get lost around here all the time." At this point, I'm justifiably freaked the fuck out. Something I haven't been able to pinpoint what feels massively wrong. What scares me isn't outright horror, but rather the feeling that something isn't right, that something shouldn't be different is different, and you can't rely on your basic senses. So I walked back downstairs and took a left, walked down a hallway and took a right, and passed by a couple of service elevators which hadn't existed a couple of minutes ago, and into a hallway to an ICU which also hadn't existed a couple of minutes ago. I told my mom about my experience, and she laughed at me, told me to stop being so silly. My dad's nurse had laughed at me too, but she said that it tends to happen a bit, and that it wasn't the first time it's happened to someone. Nobody believes me when I talk about this, so I thought I'd come to you all and share my experience, for which I have no explanation for. One of my dad's co-workers is the protagonist of this creepy encounter. He is in his 40s. I'll tell it from his point of view for clarity. The creepy part is the kicker at the end. Wait for it. I had just settled into bed for the night next to my wife. The kids were in bed, and all was quiet. My wife was already asleep next to me, so I made myself comfortable, turned off my nightstand light, and drifted off to sleep almost immediately. At some point around midnight, I was awoken by a sound in the house. I sat up in bed and listened hard, and I could hear hushed voices and various sounds indicating movement in other parts of the house. As silently as I could, I slid out of my side of the bed and crept towards my bedroom door. The door was closed, as I always left it, and took the utmost precision and patience to open it without a sound. It swung silently inward, and I crept forward down the hall. Our hallway comes to a turn, and then from there it's a straight shot to the living room. I peered around the corner, taking in all that I could see. The house was completely dark, but I could see flashes of light. My heart froze. I knew immediately that I was being robbed by more than one person because I saw multiple lights at once and heard a multitude of voices. As quietly as I could, I crept back to my room and closed the door behind me, heart racing and sweating. I rushed to the side of my bed where I had a landline plugged in. I practically dove into the floor and grabbed the phone, dialing 911. After what seemed like forever and endless questions, the police dispatched help for me. I waited, all the while hearing the noises continue in my house. I didn't wake my wife for fear that she might become frantic and alert the robbers that we were aware of their presence. I could only imagine the damage that was being done. We don't have anything unique or practically valuable, meaning nothing of the rare sort, just your regular household valuables. I was certain they'd be after the TV and the like, but we are a middle class, so I was thinking that's about the high end of what we have to offer. Then, the noises stopped entirely. The police hadn't arrived, because I would have heard them. I heard a car engine start outside, but I couldn't be certain that had to do with my house. Still, I waited, frozen, and near entering a state of full panic. The police arrived, no sign of anyone still around, but they had clearly been there and been busy, took my TV of course, and pretty much everything else in my living room. I was surprised, most of our stuff didn't strike me as valuable. As I was walking through the house taking inventory of all that was lost, I passed the garbage door, and upon opening it realized that they had stolen my car. I was in shock. Goosebumps covered my body. One cop noticed that I was standing there staring at the spot where my car had been. "Car too?" he asked. "Happens sometimes." They opened the garage, pulled it out, and closed it up again. "You leave the keys in an open, easily accessible place?" I nodded slowly and answered quietly, "My nightstand." I came home from college a few weeks ago and decided I would catch up with some close friends. I went out to lunch with a group and had a great time catching up. Later that evening, I received a call from one of my friends. Allison explained that something weird was happening at her house, and she was wondering if I could stay a few nights to see for myself. Free food, Netflix, and a corgi? How could I refuse? I went to her house the next day and spent the afternoon with her and her boyfriend, who is a friend of mine. We'll call him Zane. Anyway, Allison and Zane explained to me that they've been noticing weird shit over the past few months. Food would be on the counter when they would wake up, even though neither of them would remove it from the fridge. They'd find wrappers in the trash can from things that neither of them had opened or eaten. Additionally, money would be missing from their secret stash that they had in the house. All of these things were subtle. They didn't happen every day, maybe 3 or 4 times a month at most. It was the same deal with the money, only $2 or $3 would be missing. At this point, I was getting a little weirded out, but I decided that I would stick it out and help out Allison. I didn't know who or what we'd be dealing with, but I was more comfortable knowing that I wouldn't be the only guy in the house. Zane is about 6'1" and 200 pounds. I'm about 5'8" and 185 pounds, but I'm pretty well built. My comfort quickly faded though. Zane works as a volunteer firefighter and informed me that he had to spend the next 2 nights at the station. After he told me that, I ran home and grabbed my firearm. My dad is a retired police officer, and when I turned 18, he gave me the first firearm he used when he started his law enforcement career. It's a Colt King Cobra, 4-inch barrel, and chambered in, .357. If someone or something came into the apartment, I'd be able to drop it pretty quickly. Allison and I made dinner and settled down. Allison showed me that Zane had installed some security cameras, so we'd be able to go back and check if anything had come in. Allison mentioned that it had been a couple of weeks since the last event, and so she was convinced that something would happen any day now. We spent the evening catching up. At roughly 11:30 she turned in for the night. I cut off the lights in the living room and in the kitchen, and locked all the doors. I've always been a night owl, so I decided that I would stay up and watch some Chicago PD. I watched TV for a few hours, and then at about 2 o'clock I decided I would go to sleep. I stood up and turned around, and that's when I saw it. There was a window that was behind the couch I was sitting on, and it was open. This was a tiny-ass window, about 2 feet high and 3 feet wide, and from the outside, it was roughly 5 feet off the ground. Laying on the carpet was dirt and bits of mud that were consistent with the ground from outside the window. I knew something wasn't right. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I pulled my gun and made my way to Allison's room. I opened her door and flicked on the light. She woke up and looked at me startled, but quickly realized what was going on. "Is someone in here?" Her voice was understandably nervous. "I think so. We have to get out." She stayed behind me and I kept my pistol at the ready as we made our way to the front door. The front door was unlocked. I was certain that I had locked it earlier. I flicked the outside lights on. and we left the house. We called Zane and he got there relatively quickly. Zane grabbed his rifle from his truck and we swept the house. We checked under beds, in cabinets, closets, and Zane checked the attic while I checked under the house. Once we knew for certain it was clear, we locked all the doors, made coffee, and waited till morning. When morning came, Zane and I did a complete walkthrough of the outside of the house. We found footprints in the dirt outside the window. We went back inside, and Zane opened his computer to check the security camera footage. What we saw still scares me. At about 1 a.m., we watched the window slowly rise up, and two hands grip either side of the windowsill. This tall, slender man, dressed in a hoodie and jeans, pulls himself through the window and softly lowers himself onto the floor about 8 feet behind where I was sitting. He looks at me for a few seconds and silently moves through the dark kitchen and down the hall towards Allison's room. He even stops to pet her dog along the way. From the camera in Allison's room, we see the door open and the man enters and closes the door behind him. He walks up to her bed and leans over her, and then proceeds to open her dresser drawer, retrieve the shoebox that held her cash stash, and remove money from the box. He returned the box, closed the drawer, and left Allison's room as quietly as he had entered. We then observed him leaving through the front door. I was furious at myself for not hearing the man enter. If he had caused any harm, it would have been entirely on me. Hell, what if he decided to take me from behind and steal my firearm? At least there was a silver lining. Allison recognized the guy. She saw enough of his face to recognize that he was a kid who lives down the street. We called the police and we explained the situation to them. They had Allison call the kid's family and tell them to bring him over for lunch. The family came over, but they were greeted by 2 cops instead of Allison. The kid cracked instantly. He broke down in tears and apologized repeatedly. He was also wearing the same sweatshirt and jeans that the person on the video was wearing. His parents said that he had been struggling with mental health issues, as well as with drugs and alcohol recently. The cops asked Allison if they wanted to press charges, and she didn't. The kid's parents put him in an out-of-state rehab facility shortly after, so they could get the help he needed. I'm glad that it turned out relatively well for everyone in the end, but it still turns my stomach to think of what could have happened had it been anyone else who crawled through that window. Okay, let's start from the beginning, shall we? I work in the leasing office at a property in Texas. I also live on site. We have about 400 apartments and take up 2 sides of a street. I live across the street in the very back and try to keep to myself. I do not like for residents to know that I live there. About 2 months in, a woman and her 2 grown sons lease an apartment with us. The sons are twins. One is special needs, the other is, well, different. He has a very active imagination and is very focused on sex. Almost immediately after they moved in, things started getting weird. One day, I was crossing the street after work to go home. As soon as I reach the other sidewalk, I hear a voice call out, "Hey yo, Raquel." I turned towards the voice, which I realized was coming from the bus stop at the end of the street. I didn't recognize who it was until I got a little closer. Who the fuck is that? I think to myself. We meet face to face, and I realize who it's from when he moved in. I knew he was a little weird, so I was trying to keep my distance while still being polite. He's easy to piss off, and I do not know what he's capable of, but I don't want him to think that there's anything behind the polite hello. He starts telling me that I look just like his baby mama, who lives in North Texas, then jumps to a different subject about how he had just ran all the way from downtown to here, then decides to tell me his entire family history, naming all of his cousins and homeboys, rambling on and on about essentially nothing. I haven't said anything other than, and okay. I keep taking steps backwards to indicate that I'm trying to leave, but he keeps talking and moving closer to me. As I'm trying to leave, I notice that he has a huge boner. He was wearing basketball shorts, so it is pretty difficult to hide. This creeps me the fuck out, and I somehow managed to get away from him. He sat at the bus stop staring at me as I walked away, and I didn't want him to know that I lived there, so I just kept walking down the street to make it look like I lived somewhere. Every now and then I would see him around the property, or he would come to the office and talk to me. It was very uncomfortable. The leasing office had a hallway leading to the manager's office, the copier, and the package room. There was a door on it too, which came in handy quite a bit. His visits got to the point where every time I saw him walking up to the office, I would run and hide in the back and let the other staff deal with him. He wasn't creepy towards them, and they knew the situation, so it was cool. Cut to December, our office was being remodeled, so we were using our business center as a temporary workspace. There was only one room in or out and no place to hide. I was alone in the office one day, and who should come in walking but my worst nightmare. He needed to borrow our copy of his mail key because he misplaced his, or didn't have one, or whatever. We have to take an ID in order to release keys, and he didn't have his, so we had to go to his apartment, get the ID, and come back. In the time that he was gone, I sat up my phone on my coworker's desk and started recording video in case any crazy shit happened, so I would have the evidence. He noticed the tattoo on my shoulder and commented on it, asking, "Is that your name?" or "Why in the hell would I have my own name tattooed on myself?" I tell him that it's my grandmother's name, which sends him into this whole spiel about how he has his grandmother tattooed on him and he is an artist and draws people's faces. He leaves to go check his mail, then returns a few minutes later. However, when he returns, he has added something to his ensemble. He now has a pencil behind his ear, I suppose to make him look more of an artist. Then he said he was going to draw my face, but I have to send him a picture so he can look at the image of me. He said that he would draw me and bring the picture to the office later that week. I did not send him a picture. Months go by, no picture. I was walking through the pool to walk to my apartment, and he catches me in the pool area. Fuck, no escape. He presents me with, well, I don't really know what to call it. It's me, or I guess how he sees me. The picture was drawn on lined notebook paper and pen, and looked like he threw it together in 3 minutes. He drew me black. I'm white, wearing a short, tight dress, not something I would wear. Legs 2 different sizes, carrying a purse with a Texas symbol on it. That's not an item I own. It was very creepy. I keep it on my fridge to remind myself that I'm not safe. Upon closer inspection of said drawing, I noticed that he drew nipples on it under the dress. I thought, oh my god, did he really draw it naked? The next day I talked to the maintenance man about it. He says that he did originally draw it naked, but he decided to put clothes on it because giving it to me like that would be too forward. What the actual fuck? Another day, I was walking out of one of the pool gates and he was walking through another. I saw him out of my peripherals, but I didn't acknowledge him because, well, you get it. He says, "Hey yo, Raquel," twice in a very low voice. I'm very hard of hearing, so I can get away with pretending I didn't hear someone. Apparently, this made him angry. The reason I know this is because he talks to one of our maintenance staff about me regularly. According to him, I was very rude and he don't play that where he's from. The next few times I saw him, he had this deranged look in his eye like he was disgusted by me. It also kind of looked like he wanted to hurt me. A few weeks go by and he apparently gets over being mad and resumes being the creepiest motherfucker alive. The maintenance man tells me that he claimed to have met my boyfriend and that he's a cool dude, so he's gonna back off. I asked my boyfriend if he had ever met him and he says no. The maintenance man tells me that he claims to have met my parents when they stopped in for a visit, and they were really nice, cool people. I asked my parents if they spoke to or saw anyone while visiting me at work. They also say no. I don't know when or how he could have met them or even saw them. I never saw him around when they were here. I have confirmed from multiple different people that they were there, that he was nowhere around. Is he hiding in the fucking bushes? Recently, I decided to use our fitness center late at night. The fitness center has big windows that overlook the second pool on my side of the property. While I'm on the treadmill, which is in front of one of these windows, he appears, staring at me through the glass, waving at me, watching me. I pretend there is a glare on the window and that I didn't see him. He disappears into the dark shadows in the pool area, and I continue my workout. The next day, the maintenance man tells me that he talked to our friend and he could not stop talking about how he saw me in the fitness center. He went into detail about what I was wearing, how form-fitting it was, how sweaty I was. Overall, creepy shit that gave me the chills. I avoid the fitness center and use my real gym to avoid seeing him again. A few days go by, and my informant, the maintenance man, you get it, tells me that my stalker was wondering why I stopped going to the gym. Apparently, ever since that fateful night, he had been returning to the pool around the same time to wait for me, so that he could watch me work out again. Fucking nope. He starts to show up at the office more frequently, and I have to avoid him. Friday, he is sitting in the pool area by the office, directly behind where my desk is. There is a huge window behind me. I turn to get something out of my cabinet and catch him staring at me. He waved. I flashed a nervous peace sign and then proceeded with my business. He is not in swimwear, but rather fully dressed. He has his notebook with him, and he is frantically drawing something. I think, great, here comes another picture of me, but this time in workout clothes. Nope. My coworker went to put up the golf cart and close the cabana. She has to go through the pool area to do this, so she got a glimpse of what he was drawing. A cross, with my name going down the middle. According to him, I asked him to draw a tattoo for me, so that's what he was doing. Drawing a tattoo. For me. That has my own name on it? It's bad enough that it's a cross, but with my name, that would burn my flesh. He says he's going to give it to me the next day. The next day, he didn't show up. I am not sure when I asked him to draw me a tattoo, but I'm pretty sure it was fucking never. 2 weeks pass and I think that maybe he isn't going to give me the drawing, and enough time has passed that he gave up and I could use the fitness center again. My friend and I went around 8 p.m. and we didn't see any signs of him, so we go ahead with our workout. I was flipping over to do leg raises on my right side, which causes me to face the door. Chills engulf my entire existence and my heart stops for a second. He is standing directly across the street, on the phone, staring at me through the door. I start to panic and find a place to hide from view, peeking around the corner. I see him turn and walk through the outside hallway behind the leasing office, his normal route to his apartment. Hoping that he wouldn't come back for a while, we continue our workout. I keep glancing out of the window every few seconds to make sure he isn't there. He reappears, still talking on the phone, but this time he starts pacing around the fitness center very slowly, looking through the windows with this creepy-ass side glance, like I wouldn't be able to see him creeping. I keep trying to hide from view, and I'm waiting for an opportunity to get the fuck out of there. I'm hiding in a corner, and he walks up to the locked door and fucking knocks on it. He continues to knock for a solid 3 minutes. He walks down the street a little way, and I take the chance to run the fuck back to my apartment as fast as I can. Today, my informant tells me that Stalker said I wouldn't let him into the fitness center for a drink of water. He said he had just run all the way from out of town and he just wanted water, but I wouldn't let him in. Then he switched up his story and said that he was trying to give me the drawing of the tattoo that I had asked him for. 1. He didn't run from anywhere. He was wearing flip-flops. 2. He had been standing still for a good 30 minutes before coming to the fitness center. He had gone back to his fucking apartment where there is water, so why the fuck would he go all the way to the fitness center for water? 3. He didn't have the drawing with him. He didn't have pockets on what he was wearing and it wasn't in his hands. He also claims to have talked to my neighbor that lives across the street from me and said that I am a weird and crazy girl and he should stay away from me. That shook me to my core, because if that is true, then he knows where the fuck I live. I knocked on my neighbor's door and asked him about it. He says he has no idea what I'm talking about. Luckily, this Friday is my last day at this property as I am transferring to a new one closer to where I want to live. I will still live here for 2 more months. I can't wait to leave.